There we go. All right. Good morning, everybody. Today is Tuesday, August 31st. Coming to the end of the month. Lots of goodies, right? Like we look at SPY, right? Obviously yesterday and the Friday before was really bullish in the sense that it just kind of kept uptrending, right? Like after the open, it's made a low, and then from there, it just kind of held and it kept grinding back up, right? So yesterday, SPY did the same thing. Bullish in a sense that it's been making new all-time highs, right? Same with the Qs and all. So market overall, like seems like there's a lot of buying coming back in, right? So we're seeing a lot of buying coming in, and it's kind of like supporting a lot of these larger cap names, right? So what I did on the SPY was I drew like a trend line, right? Like from last Friday, and then I ended up extending it yesterday, and it's like holding like really nicely on this trend. So I would love to see a continuation off of this trend line, right? So this is again the 5 minutes without the pre-market and after hours. So it's really just like the volume that's traded intraday that's holding this support, right? Like it tried to break down here, ended up reclaiming, and then bouncing off of that level, right? So that said, I'm looking for more bullishness. However, stock has been up for couple days, and then it kind of like tapers off, pulls back, and then grinds back up, right? So today, if it's unable to push over prior day highs, I'm guessing it's going to be somewhat of an inside day again. Like hopefully it tapers off. If it breaks down, right? If it breaks down below prior day lows, then potentially it's going to have a day that's similar to this, right? As we can see, the days where it break down lows, right? Like this one was kind of like a doji day, and right here it never broke down prior day's low, but on Thursday, once it broke down Wednesday's lows right here, it ended up being a red day, right? So I'm looking for very similar moves for red days where it has to break prior day lows for it to have more downside. So a couple thesis here is that potentially if it doesn't break over yesterday's highs, then we might get like somewhat of an inside day. If it's weak enough to break down the lows, then I'll be careful on my large cap longs, right? That's typically my what I typically look for. But as of now, it is a little bit weaker. I was hoping that this gap up would hold and kind of just keep trading along. But as of now, it's probably going to open red from prior day. So I'm looking for this 450s to hold, 450.7, right? I'm looking for it to hold if it does pull back. If not, then I'll have to reassess a lot of my long side positions and just be extra careful, right? Like I don't have to force the trades if the market's not letting me take those trades, right? So gotta have the plans, guys. So make sure you have the thesis for what happens when it goes one way, what happens when it goes the other way, right? So you're ready to react, right? You're ready to adapt to whatever the market changes. And that's how I typically go about it. And then let's go ahead and jump right into the stocks that I've been looking at this morning. ACIU is the first one. So right here, ACIU. I think the news is ACIU shares are trading higher after the company announced the top line data for their phase 2 trial, right? So again, very important to look at historically how the chart, how the chart trades by itself, right? So if we look at ACIU from the past, okay, let's just look at it from the past. Let's look at the daily chart first, right, guys? So we know that it had a day where it ran right here, which was February 11th, right? And we also have a day that ran right here, July 16th of 2020. Right, and if we're looking back some more, right, there's going to be days where it just has like a one-day pop. But let's just look at these 2 days, for example, right? And we look at the intraday chart on those 2 days, right? This is the February 11th one. This is going to be a 20-minute because if I don't use a 20-minute, I won't be able to kind of go as far as back. So with that said, what ACIU did was it had a really big pre-market run, pop, and then kind of like faded, right? This is a 30% institutional ownership stock. It's not that high, but it is kind of like on that side of high IO, right? Starting to get there. 34 million floater. It popped in pre-market and just faded, after the open and just kind of like died, right? That's what it did in February, right? So let's look at July as well. More back. Oh, all right. So here's another day that it ran, right? What did it do? Same thing, right? Pre-market had this huge run up, right? And it kind of like opened, popped, faded, and just kind of like died from there. Right. So we know that historically this is going to be a bag holder chart, right? There's a lot of bag holders in this from, the 14s, 13s, right? And on this day, February, a lot of people were trying to short of those levels and it got squeezed. So we know that there's a lot more bag holders up in here now, right? This big wick from 25s all the way back down to 16s. We know that there's a lot of bag holders that are left there that, haven't had much chance to get out. And how do we know much of that is, the volume's been really, really like thinned out from there, right? Like there just hasn't been any much trade that happened after those dumps, those big major dumps. So with that said, that leaves me sort of like a bearish sentiment on the stock. And then looking at the most recent day that it ran with some significant volume was back in June 7th, right? So let's look at June 7th. Right, same thing that happened, right? Pops in pre-market up to that level and fades off completely. So I'm not saying that, that's exactly what the ACIU is going to do today, right? But, the last 3 times that it made some massive move in pre-market, it did something very similar where it just kind of like faded. So I wouldn't be too long biased on this name. Or if I am, I just know, respect my stops, know that if it doesn't bounce, I should not be averaging down on these trades like this, right? Because there's obviously a lot of bag holders in here still. There's a lot of, people that are left that are looking to still short this as well, right? So against those levels. So if it gets too heavy on the sell side, just don't think that you can just average down and hopefully it'll bounce back up. Because the last 3 times that it did some sort of like pre-market moves, we didn't see it a bounce, right? That being said, it's not saying that it's 100% not going to happen. You just have to make your plans or kind of like position yourself in the trade if you're trading this, to position it accordingly, right? So so key level that I'm looking at for this one, it's going to be right here in the 13s area, right? If it can get over that 13s, which is really just the highs of these levels, right? Like it basically has to get over these levels, 1250, 13s, right? They're pretty important in the sense that if it gets over that, we might get a chance to see it go a little bit further and push up, right? Because obviously it's the bag holders that are here, are not as underwater anymore, right? So if they can get over and hold, right, then we might get a potential chance that it will run a little bit, right? Outside of that, I wouldn't say that this is going to run back up to 25s on this pre-market day, right? Like where it hit the highs of this pre-market. I'm not going to say it's going to go back to 25s or anything like that, but over this is definitely a little bit easier for the longs. I'm not saying it's an indefinite long play. I am leaning more short bias on this name, right? On big pops and all that stuff. But 13s will be my key level. Right above that, you're gonna have your 14s or 1375s, right? 1460s. Right? These are previous levels from prior times that it ran, so I'm still using those. I think they're significant enough, right? Under this, obviously you're gonna have the 1250 levels right here, and then you're gonna have, your intraday wise, you're gonna have your 1190s, which was I think the highs at this point right here, right? Kind of like the highs in the opening time where before this pop up, and then now it's like kind of like faded back below that 1190s, right? Below that, you're gonna have your 1080s, which is somewhat support right here. If this cracks, I can see this potentially go back down, maybe back to 9s or even 850s, right? So that being said, again, manage your trades accordingly. I mean, if this continues to fade without pop, maybe if you're short, you can hold a little bit longer. Like it's just historically last 3 times that it ran, it did the same thing where it just kind of like bled out all day, gave no pops, right? So again, you could use history to kind of like manage your trade a little bit. And if it does go away from how history typically happens, then again, just gotta adapt that, right? And make your changes accordingly, right? So again, leaning short bias, over 13s, I might look for it to push further for a bigger pop to short, but I'm not really like a fan of a long trade on this name, just because too many bag holders, right? Sour taste in their mouths, right? That's the first one. APPS is the next one. I think somebody mentioned this, and I think it's a pretty decent move in a sense, right? I think the news is that it's being upgraded or it'll join the S&P mid-cap 400s, right? So somewhat of a bullish news. It means, I'm looking at the earnings of the company. Let me go ahead and pull this up. Oops. I had this pulled up. I mean, I'm looking at earning. I mean, this company, it has positive EPS increase, right? And positive revenue. So that has continued to increase last year and this year as well. So, I mean, yeah, I think this company is, it's good that they're letting you join the mid-cap 400s. I think it's a legitimate sort of upgrade for this, right? Key level that I'm looking at, this 57.70s, right? So obviously this is the support on the daily, nearby support, right? Nearby support right here, right? So nearby support that, you know, it has crack, it hasn't been tested back as a resistance yet or anything like that. And today pre-market, right, obviously gapped up to that level, 57s, 57.70s, right? That's the key level I'm looking at. Yeah, so if we can get over that and hold some support, then again, it's going to have more, I will see that that's more bullish to have a continuation up. However, the only problem there is that it's gapping up from $51, right? So it's a pretty decent gap up. But if it can kind of gap and hold that key level, I do expect to see a little bit more upside, maybe like 59s, right? 59.50s or something like that. I don't expect this to run any further than like 60 or 61, just because the gap up is so huge, right? It's going to be, you know, over $10 already. Like if it goes over to like 60, 61, right? Friday close is 51.20s. That being said, hopefully it doesn't sell off too heavy where it kills the sentiment on the stock, but it can potentially have a profit-taking sort of like move, right? I think under the 57s, you're gonna have 55s, right? 55.50 is right around here. This pre-market support, this pink dotted line. If it cracks that, you could see potentially going back to like maybe even low 54s, right? Somewhere around here, 54, like this support right here in after hours. Below that, obviously you have prior day highs, which is around like 53s. But this is a pretty big move, I think a lot of shorts that were shorting this yesterday here didn't expect this to kind of have this move, because the news of the S&P, being moved up to the S&P mid-cap actually came out yesterday and didn't have much reaction, right? So people are probably thinking, oh, there's no reaction, I'm shorting this, and then boom, they're getting squeezed $7 or so. So I don't think it's going to be that easy to fade back down to like 50s. So that being said, if you play like around key levels, key supports areas, and just risk off of those, you know, breakdowns of those areas, then I think it's a pretty sort of like a less volatile trade, right? Like it's not going to swing like the small caps. So I think this will be a little bit easier trade, but obviously you're going to have to look for volume, right? A lot of these mid caps and large caps, you're not going to see volume coming in until after the market opens. So that being said, keeping this on watch, key levels hopefully can go over this 57.80s for a more conviction type of long play. Again, but if it pops up to that and it keeps rejecting, then, you know, just got to be extra careful. Potentially short play there too, but, you know, if you short off of this 57.80s, again, you know, the cutoff is going to be if it gets over that and keeps holding, right? So that's another one. ZM, large cap, right? Pretty massive sell-off. It's kind of a mixed feeling on this, in the sense that I don't have a bias on this, because earnings are so good, right? Like their earnings EPS were a beat, and their sales were also a beat. And this is the first time they've ever recorded a $1 billion sort of like a quarter, right, on sales. And so it's a beat on earnings. However, the sell-off was just so drastic. Yeah, I don't have any specific bias. If it holds, then I'll look for a dip buy opportunity. All right. If it's kind of like gaps down and continues to go down, then just got to be extra careful. I mean, I drew levels when I was planning this. It was around like right this time around here, 307s, and it's already cracking some of the levels that I've pulled up from the daily. Right, 299s was one of them. It's below that now. Right, so I'm just being extra careful on this thing today. You know, I had 305s as my key level, right? Like this support here. If it can get back over this 305s and kind of like hold and curl over. So you're looking for that sort of like this move like this where it curls over, but just continuation, right? So if it curls and still holds and it starts going upside sort of like a trend reversal type of play, right? So it's then possibly a reversal on that, right? 305 was a key level that I'm looking at for potential maybe buy back up to like 310s area, 309s, right? This is pre-market highs. If it can get over that, we have levels. Obviously, it's going to open with SSR triggered already, right? Like this little blue dotted line is going to be my SSR. It's going to open with that SSR triggered, right? So won't be as easy to short it, but doesn't mean that it still won't get sold off, right? So so hopefully that SSR will help trigger any sort of like long support, right? So we'll see that. We'll see what happens. But 309s, potential, maybe even 318s, right? If it could push back over. Aside from that, I don't see this, being able to go back to like, prior day close levels, 350s. If it does, it'd be amazing, right? However, I think it's a play where we have to kind of watch after the market opens, see what, overall market cues and all of that, like what they're doing, SPY, how's it reacting, to have more sort of like long bias support and everything, right? So that's what I'm looking at. Downside from this 305s, obviously I was looking at, 299s was one of them, and below this you potentially could hit as low as 285s, I think. That being said, 285s is another level below this. It's just wow. I'm not really have a specific bias on this name. However, I wanted this level to hold at least to see if we can get a reversal move. But let's see what it does. I'm looking for a dip buy if it goes down to 285s, just small dip buy, right? So that being said, next stock that I was looking at was Tesla. Not much volume in pre-market. I mean, this was a very bullish move yesterday, right? A bullish move. Was hoping for more, like a bigger gap up, like 740s gap up type play. But it did have a nice kind of like follow through after hours. So same thing. This one's very easy. I'm just gonna be watching this with the SPY, how the SPY reacts, right? I think this one's moving very closely with how SPY is moving in the pre-market right now. It's not selling off, so it's some sign of like strength there in the sense that SPY will start selling off a bit, but this one's kind of still holding around this level. So key level is probably going to be just prior day close, prior day highs, right? Which is this 730s area, 731s. That's going to be a key level I'll be watching. If it can kind of just hold and continue, then we'll play that trend join continuation move, right? Like if it breaks out and pulls back and holds, and the risk is very, very tight if you can play it near the levels. And I was hoping for this to kind of gap up a little bit and maybe even push to 750, 760s. But if it's unable to hold pre-market lows and all this stuff right around here, key levels, 720, 726s, 728s, right? If it's unable to hold this area, you got to be careful because it can potentially pull back to like 710, 715s, right? So just again, watch the market closely with this. So those are the four stocks that I was going to watch today: ACIU, APPS, ZM, Tesla, right? There's a couple more like RHE. It made a move in pre-market. When I came in, I was planning. It was actually somewhere around here over VWAP still. However, I just don't like RHE because it's an AMEX stock. It trades really weird sometimes, right? So just got to be careful. I don't see any news on this either, right? So this could do something weird, right, after the market opens, right? Because it's just RHE just trades really weird. So I'm keeping this one on side watch, and then also SYTA. I didn't see any news, so I didn't bother with it. But it looked like it's kind of like dying out already, right? So, yep. So those are the main watches: ACIU, APPS, ZM, Tesla for me, and that's the main watch.